While schizophrenia reigns supreme in the White House, there was a red line stated, this is our red line, my red line. Now it's not his red line, it's the world's red line, it's Congress's red line. This is the president that wanted recess appointments and ran around Congress when they weren't in session, who didn't want to support the Defense of Marriage Act, who doesn't support other activities, who goes overseas and does various things like Libya without asking permission. And suddenly, it's imperative that he have congressional approval of an action against Syria. What is going on? I think both houses are a little dismayed, both parties, as to exactly what's happening.
Well, the president right now is off to Russia for the G20 summit. Syria, which is the hot topic in the news, isn't officially on the agenda, but it is expected to be the big topic over there. Charlene Israel has the story.
A tense moment for President Obama today as he faces off with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin backs the Assad regime and says the U.S. is lying about Syria's use of chemical weapons. He's warned President Obama not to take action in Syria without UN approval.
Only the UN Security Council could sanction the use of force against a sovereign state.
But the U.S. moves forward with its plans to punish Syria. President Obama monitoring the votes of lawmakers here at home and calling for a strong international response. At the same time, he's also trying to step back from his red line declaration that started him on the path to a U.S. strike.
I didn't set a red line. The world set a red line. The world set a red line when governments representing 98% of the world's population said the use of chemical weapons are abhorrent and passed a treaty forbidding their use even when countries are engaged in war.
Back in Washington, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee passed a resolution that would give the president the authority to strike Syria. But it's still unclear whether it can pass the full Senate or House. Wednesday, Secretary of State John Kerry tried to convince House members to vote yes.
The world is wondering whether the United States of America is going to consent through silence to stand aside while this kind of brutality is allowed to happen without consequence.
The president has been facing criticism for his handling of the crisis in Syria. Conservative writer John Fund outlined Obama's history of a, quote, pattern of indecisiveness. Fund wrote in National Review Online, Washington is abuzz with talk about how much President Obama has damaged America's credibility with his indecisiveness on Syria. And skepticism on Capitol Hill is coming from both Democrats and Republicans.
I don't believe that we should have given up so easily on using the United Nations.
We haven't given up.
Yes, we have.
I see a horrible tragedy, but I don't see that our involvement will lessen the tragedy.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
I don't think the American people want to go to war, and they certainly don't want to throw cruise missiles at Syrian cities where civilians are living now among the military installations, where the warplanes have been dispersed, where who knows who's got the chemical weapons and who knows who's on the side of Al-Qaeda or not. The lines are so blurred, and that's why the American people don't want to have any part of it. That's the problem.
Well, there seems to be a great deal of question now, as it was in the beginning, about who actually used the
I
chemicals.
think the chances are they've established that, but even so the Syrian government used it. Okay, big deal. So civilians were injured, so fine. Now, how are you going to punish? You're going to throw a shot across the bow. That doesn't do anything except splash water. Assad has had plenty of time now to move his chemicals, move his weapons, move his airplanes, hide his facilities in the middle of civilian population. How are we going to hurt him? So who will we hurt? We'll hurt innocent Syrian civilians. That's who will be the subject of our bombing. And it makes no sense. And then they talk about boots on the ground. It'll take about 75,000 American troops to secure those chemical weapons. Maybe. Oh, I don't know about you. I am war weary. Well, here at home, The National Security Agency is facing a major lawsuit over one of its domestic spying programs. John Jessup has that story from Washington.
Pat, the National Rifle Association has joined in a lawsuit against the National Security Agency. The gun owners lobby filed an amicus brief in a suit against the NSA surveillance program that collects phone records. The NRA says the program essentially is developing a national gun registry, something that Congress has repeatedly rejected. The NRA also warns the surveillance program violates Americans' constitutional rights to free speech. The American Civil Liberties Union filed the original suit, and several news organizations have joined in. Conservative activists are pushing for Republicans in Congress to stop the funding of Obamacare, and analysts warn it will mean higher prices for health care. Paul Strand has that story.
Conservative critics say most Republican lawmakers refuse to make meaningful moves to strip Obamacare's funding. That's why this rally was held right outside House Majority Leader Eric Cantor's home offices.
He has the majority in the House, and he needs to do that which he pledged to do, which is to defund it.
Soon the American people will get hit by Obamacare's extremely controversial individual mandate, which will force them to buy health care insurance or pay a penalty. Mike Tanner of the Cato Institute says that mandate will take away competition and lead to higher prices for health insurance.
Just imagine any other product that you're going to buy, whether you're going to buy Twinkies, and you're ordered by the government that you must buy a Twinkie no matter what anyone charges for it. Well, you'd have $100 Twinkies out there. Nothing you could do about it. What forces down prices is consumers saying, hey, that's too expensive, I won't buy it.
Tanner warns Obamacare increasingly puts government in charge of health care, and that's dangerous for America.
More and more decisions are going to be taken away from individual consumers. Now, think of any other goods and services that you buy. If someone else decides what those services are going to be, what those goods are going to be, about quality, about how much you can have, about what they cost, that's not a good recipe. That's what basically made Eastern Europe collapse.
Speakers at this rally pointed out many businesses, unions, and lawmakers themselves are so afraid of Obamacare, they're trying to get exemptions, or they've already gotten them.
The presidents of labor unions are saying that this law will shatter their workers' health insurance and destroy the 40-hour work week.
The unions don't want to have anything to do with it. It's such bad news that Eric Cantor and the rest of Congress has exempted itself from it.
If it's not good enough for all these other groups, it's not good enough for the rest of America.
One of the main messages here is that some of the biggest parts of Obamacare are about to kick in, and this is the Republicans' last best chance to defund it. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Richmond, Virginia.
The new methods of producing oil and natural gas here in the U.S., called fracking, are good for your pocketbook. A new study finds the oil and gas boom has boosted the incomes of the average American household by $1,200 because of cheaper energy costs like electricity and heating. And that's expected to go up $2,000 by 2015. The study also found that the energy boom has brought in nearly $75 billion to federal and state revenues. Well, a growing number of Americans are finding a new way to read the Bible on the internet. According to a survey for the American Bible Society by Barna Research, 41% read the Bible on a computer in the last year. 29% searched it on a cell phone, and 17% read it on an e-reader like a Kindle or an iPad. But 85% of those who read the Bible still say they prefer a print version. 69% of adults consider themselves moderately or somewhat knowledgeable about the Bible, and 12% say they're highly knowledgeable. Pat, if 2 in 5 people are reading their Bible online, where do you fall? Are you the 2 that read it online, or you prefer hard copy?
I'm a fan of Kindle. I read books voraciously. I've got a huge group of books I read on Kindle. I really like reading it off an iPad. It's so simple. You just push things, you turn pages, you can read books so quickly, and I read very quickly. But as far as the Bible, I want a great big Bible with all kinds of little notes and things, and I can take my time and sort of chew on it. So, yeah.
I'm for the hard copy too.
Yeah. But hey, if they're reading online, God bless them. Yeah. That's good news.
A legal fight over same-sex marriage licenses in Pennsylvania is now in a state court. The county clerk has issued more than 160 marriage licenses to same-sex couples after the Supreme Court ruling on gay marriage back in July. Now the health department, led by Republican Governor Tom Corbett, is suing. They argue the clerk can only give licenses that meet the state's definition of marriage as between a man and a woman. Well, a Rhode Island man is suing to silence the church bells in his neighborhood. John Devaney says the bells from a nearby Catholic church disturb his peace and were a reason his marriage ended in divorce. He wants the federal government to cut the number of times the bells ring. The bells were installed 6 years after he bought his home. The church says it has the right to ring the bells. Religious institutions are exempt from city noise ordinances. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to cbnnews.com.